Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's time once again to remove the V that's got a hold of your noose. I'm your host, Ben the Skullcap Savant, here for another episode of V-Cipher Decodes in the Culture. It's April 11th, 2024. It's 3 days past the eclipse now. And oh boy, do we have an episode to go through today relative to everything that's happened. It's been a few weeks since I recorded my last video even. You guys can find that here on my Rumble page if you haven't seen it yet. I think most of you are actually watching this from YouTube or BitChute. But I really do encourage you guys, as kind of a public service announcement, just before we get going today, to follow my Rumble page, because it's probably the only one where I'm going to be able to archive everything effectively. YouTube gives me warnings to this day, even with the last couple that they've allowed me to post up there, and my days are numbered. One day they're just going to shut that thing off because it's like got one strike left on it. And then, you know, BitChute, I don't even have access to anymore. I don't know how my videos are getting posted there. They are getting mirrored there by someone, and they're not altered. I actually went through the last couple that are mirrored over on my BitChute page, but I tried to reset my password on that, guys. I don't even get an email back through. It's still registered to my email account. So it's weird, but for those reasons, if you follow me on either one of those, come over to my Rumble page, follow me here. But we've been bringing back up the last couple of videos, a couple of themes that we're going to touch on today too, mainly the Death Stranding components from the Super Bowl video. Die Hardman, number 12, Hardman, that caught the winning pass to win the game, 25-22, very V-Steg-esque score. Then the Jim Carrey connection with Ace Ventura, how we parlayed that into, you know, all the V-Steg that matches him up with a likelihood of being Biden in a mask. And where's the real Biden? Who knows? But the rituals extend from Super Bowl and the mind control that existed there all the way over into WrestleMania and the Emerald City and the Wizard of Oz and the solar eclipse themes. The momentum has been building ever since I've been back, guys, is all I'm trying to say. And today is going to be no different. We're gonna get into these topics. We're going to bring up solar eclipse. We're going to bring up Death Stranding. We're going to bring up Wizard of Oz. Those are the main themes. The mind control that seems to be at play with the Saturnian moon control system, I'll get into. Earth Grid Control Network. You know, I mean, hashtag all of my work, basically. It's culminating, and it's not surprising that it is, because now we are past that eclipse period. It was always, since the beginning of my work, forecast that the Earth Grid Control Network, and ever since we actually stumbled onto the winter solstice reset ritual stuff a couple of years back, we've been tying the Earth Grid Control Network in with these key events, with the solar eclipse. So in addition to, you know, keeping these last two videos in mind, another thing that you can do right from the get-go is, if you want to go watch this video here, House of M, Hex on Humanity, Templar Reset Ritual, and then this one down here, Crypto Cosmology. Oop, my head's covering it. Here it is. Crypto Cosmology, CERN Circles, and the Alchemy Underground. These two videos, I mean, one of them's shorter than the other. One of them's 4.5 hours long. This one here, and I will be referencing the relevant points to the work today, so you don't have to do all the hard work if you don't want to. But those are the ones also to watch if you're just losing the thread today. But we're gonna start with the main event. It's not WrestleMania. WrestleMania is one of these themes, like I said. But the main event that ties the Death Stranding, Super Bowl, and WrestleMania thing together was the main thing that dominated the news cycle in the last several weeks since we've seen each other too. The Baltimore Bridge collapse, the Key Bridge in Baltimore Harbor. So if you've got two, you know, sides of your brain functioning, you look back to the videos I was just trying to reference to you. One of them was about shipping container ships. Actually, we're going to make a connection with this bridge incident in Baltimore and the Ever Given Suez Canal blockage that happened a couple of years ago and disrupted shipping lanes then. Obviously, the subtext of this story the main thing people talk about is the supply line disruption. Of course, on the surface, that's the effect that the people see. But we are looking deeper always at these key events and how they line up with the V steganographic components that are blocking our mind from seeing something deeper than it is. By most accounts, I'm sure everybody knows the surface details of this story since we've talked. I don't need to go into it too deeply. Obviously, this ship left. It crashed into the whole bridge collapsed. Everybody's seen the footage. Here's the current photo of, it's not current, but it's the aftermath. It's March 26th, the day after the collapse of the bridge. And this container ship allegedly killed a bunch of people, 6 of them, I think, to be exact, that were working on the bridge. And they made that about the human tragedy. Curiously enough, 22 crew members were on this ship. So there's something Al Jazeera reported on. 22 crew members. They were the only ones that seemed to report this. I couldn't find a lot of other news outlets pointing at this. But remember, the Key Bridge is also the name of the bridge we want to keep in mind. But this did occur, guys. And interestingly enough, it happened in Baltimore. What does this have to do with any of the Earth Grid Control Network stuff? Well, I'm going to show you guys. Let's butter you back up to the Bridges network. So remember, on my little photo slideshow I've got here, Bridges. Death Stranding. Death Stranding is a video game about the metempsychoses where you as the main character are trudging through your afterlife process and resolving karma by delivering packages. It's all about supply chains. It's an abstraction. It's a layer of abstraction on what's being construed as the United Cities of America. Here's one of the other bridge patches that you see in the game. It's an abstraction of the United States where everything has been annihilated because some sort of conflict that you can't really put your hands on has taken place, and everybody's discombobulated and disconnected. And they're so remote from each other that what you're trying to do is you're trying to maintain a level of trust by delivering packages, resolving karma, and convince everybody that they should be networked back into the cities again, because everybody has lost trust with the traditional networks. Anyway, there's a lot to it. My earlier work went into it, but my earlier work also connected some of the key symbolism of the Bridges network in the video game with the Earth Grid Control Network that we've become synonymous with also here with even Konstantin Miles' work. By the way, he's, not that one. We're going to get into, there we go. I'm still messing around a little bit with my new controllers, but these are the books we're going to dive into today too in reference. Obviously, Magic of Oz has to do with what I've already alluded to, the Wizard of Oz themes that are going on. But the Konstantin Miles book, which is called Scalar Waves, is kind of a dissertation, kind of like almost like how do you say? It's almost like a textbook. So the textbook on all concepts that relate Tesla's types of technology to conventional everyday uses and understandings in the modern day. It's a book that's worth having, and I've got it in my Evernote server if you guys have subscribed to that in the past. But anyhow, back to the point. The understanding of the Earth Grid Control Network and Bridges is key for us to start to talk about how this might be used against us in a mind control sense. All of my work in the past has covered all of that, guys, and it's not necessarily easy to digest, but the gist of it is that using the ley line network, you have all of these key points that if ley line energy crossings are occurrent, they're more powerful to capture energy and to create perceptive anomalies. And they do this by way of the phi ratio. It's a frequency generation thing that they use Saturn and the moon to accomplish. I mean, this is our supposition anyway, especially following Rudolf Steiner's lecture 5, about the eighth sphere and how it operates and what the eighth sphere really is. And is it this kind of like perceptive prison that we've been put in? It labels Ahriman as the evil force behind this. We've gone into a lot of this stuff in my work in the past. This isn't new. It's very familiar, I should say, to the people who have been following the work. But why am I going to all this extent, guys? Well, for the obvious reason, Bridges is the name of the network. A bridge collapsed. And a bridge collapsed on the focal point of the Bridges network as shown in the Earth Grid Control Network. Run out of DC, of course, but DC is a couple miles away from Baltimore. So the first hit that we have on our VSTEG of the things that are going to lead to our reset, in other words, of our perceptive frameworks post the eclipse, is that this bridge collapsed right before it and right in accordance with the symbolic location of where we've talked about in the past. Creepy, right? Notice in the Florida Maquis Earth Grid Network, by the way, guys, the one that connects DC goes straight into Las Vegas. The methodology that he used to connect these, by the way, I explained a little bit in the last episode, but he finds key temples, like the Pentagon, by the way, is where he draws the lines out of from DC, because it's obvious, like this is the pentagonal network that he started to find. He started to find these key points on Earth's surface that connected because they're pentagons. So he would just draw a straight line in one direction off of one of the points of a pentagon, and he'd find another pentagon. And sure enough, he repeated this process with different networks, and he color-coded them. But the ones that he directly connected along these demarcation lines that he would draw and find another pentagon, he would start with the same color. And Vegas had several. So Las Vegas is connected. The Super Bowl was in Vegas. Die Hardman. Remember, Die Hardman is the character in Death Stranding that's the administrative body of the Bridges network, trying to get... He's like the bureaucratic minion of the powers that be to unite all of the cities. Think 15-minute cities, right? All these themes that the capital not city is where his base of operation is, what they call basically Washington, D.C. in the game. And president of the United Cities of America and director of Bridges, Special Forces operative. Okay, so Hardman, number 12, caught the winning pass in the Super Bowl. We remember all of this, and we remember how that tied into the Jim Carrey stuff. Well, now, post-eclipse, isn't it funny how the Super Bowl themes in this way, through this video game that Hideo Kojima, once upon a time, created for us? And remember, Hideo Kojima's making a second one where the baby's already born. So we're gonna this thread isn't over, guys. Like this, the VSTEG is far from over from decoding all of this, and we're not gonna draw any too over the top conclusions today relative to this. But isn't it interesting that here we are starting the theme of the day with Bridges and the collapse of the Key Bridge? Well, if that weren't weird enough, what you guys want to probably also reconsider is that part and parcel with the winter solstice reset ritual was the involvement of the state of Pennsylvania in the elections that year, 2020. I've referenced this video a lot too. I'm not going to show any necessarily scenes from this video. But once again, if you guys need to go back and watch this one, I reference this one almost every video now, the New Jerusalem and Earth's Hidden Destiny, and then this one here, the 12/21 Winter Solstice Reset Ritual. If you watch both of these combined, you're going to see the fertility ritual in play that has to do with these astrological castings of the solar eclipse, and essentially what amounted to our supposition that the Templars were casting counterspells against these mind control spells that are being cast from Saturn and the moon. And they were doing them in these times, and they're doing them in ways we can't quite understand, but that the VSTEG certainly shows us that they are in some sort of a way. It was during this time also that we also were we're getting some pretty weird vibes about Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and how it relates to Nikola Tesla, this whole common thread. That's going to come back into it today too. But it's obvious that the bridges connection is the steganography, right, guys? I think we can all point to the fact that 22 crew members, the bridge collapse that began the catastrophic supply chain shortage that may or may not happen, but I think this is just one of the dominoes that's falling. There's a sugar company there, by the way, that's called Domino Sugar Company. Domino Sugar Refinery. Remember Domino and the whole thing about the last episode in our last episodes with Deadpool and Domino and the phi ratio and how the steganography embedded in that, the new Wolverine movie that's coming out this summer. We don't have a lot of beats we're getting onto that today with, but it is interesting that there's yet another connection with Domino. But funny enough, Domino, right? So these are all the supply terminals that are in there. There's coal, there's sugar, there's precious metals. There is a cruise ship terminal. Excuse me. And also auto manufacturing. There's a lot of supply chain disruption that's going to come from this event, and we don't yet quite get how all of those components post-eclipse are going to affect it. But the bridges collapsed. The disunited cities of America are now going to occur. The conditions of the Death Stranding video game, which disunites everybody, the dominoes are now in play. And not only that, but we have, with that event, some very key things with the reset happening. For the first time in a while, I have hope that people can learn this steganography stuff, because they were looking finally at events like the Leave the World Behind movie, which is the movie that Obama and Big Mike financed. It's one of Netflix's top movies, and in the opening scene, this container ship that loses power, or loses ability to steer, rather, is probably a better way to put it, because I think it loses. I haven't seen the whole movie, actually, guys. I've only seen a couple of scenes from this one. I don't have a Netflix account right now. That's part of the problem. But the thing is this container ship, so many people have already decoded on the internet. I don't want to spend too much time doing it. It kind of drove into the beach, and the name of it was the White Lion, and this was something that the conspiracy theorists took too far. Everyone in kind of like the leftist liberal media was trying to downplay a lot of this stuff. Also in the movie, noteworthy, all the Teslas, all the EVs were recalled due to an autopilot safety concern, and it echoed the film's depiction of every self-driving Tesla being hacked to cause devastating car crashes and back up traffic. So this is also in the movie. Hacking of cars. This is also a reason not to get an EV, just a basic one, but everyone's saying that it happened in Baltimore because this was, predictive programming, and they're finally getting onto this. And the popular media is having to run distraction campaigns against it, and waste energy as if, this isn't significant in some sort of a way. White Lion was interesting to me because of the work that we've done on the channel. That actually part of the VSTEG hides the fact that we're going into the age of Leo, right? In the Yuga cycle way of things, we're going into, in the middle of the Bronze Age. We're right in the apex of it. And we are going into the age of Leo, not Aquarius. This is because of the misdirection that's happened over the years, where the vernal equinox is said to be the beginning of the new year relative to the Yuga cycle, and it isn't. It's the autumnal equinox, at least as the ancients recorded it, putting everything 180 degrees out of phase. But yeah, the age of Aries and the White Lion, there's clearly a lie over time. They don't want us knowing about the White Lion, the age of Aries. There's a real reason we're going into this. In the White Lion, of course, as it relates to the movie, I think, is the Aryan lions. The Aryan lions, right? The tribe of Dan. Some of these ancient Aryan mysteries as they relate to Mars, the planet of Ares, we will also connect the dots with here in just a couple of minutes. But this is interesting, right? So the whole Leave the World Behind movie coming out, it was cool to see so many people watching it with a discerning eye. Also, when it came out, just, straight up, hey, this thing came out. What am I going to see in this that is predictive programming? A lot of people went into even watching the movie with that in mind. And so they already had this on the brain when the event transpired, where they're trying to, see how they've been duped. But one of the other things that happened to tie in, to go back to this, in addition to, the ship crashing into the beach at the very first scene of the movie, this other thing with the Teslas being commandeered and hacked and using as projectile weapons in the movie is actually something I suspect we're going to start seeing in our everyday environment too, because this also happened at a different bridge back in, I think it was November. Yeah, November 24th. I don't know if anybody remembers this event happening, but there's this Rainbow Bridge in Niagara Falls where a car, here it is right here, was commandeered and launched as a weapon into the border crossing. They said that there were these two people in here, Kurt and Monica Villani, right? Suspect because of the V-Steg in the name, and the fact that it happened at Niagara Falls on the Rainbow Bridge. I'll get to that in a second, but the Rainbow Bridge is significant here. Think Wizard of Oz, by the way, guys. People who have been here for a while know how significant rainbows are to the Wizard of Oz ethos of the Steg, and also how it connects with Bix Weir's Road to Ruta theory because of all of its financial reset and Wizard of Oz beats. But it also connects with Tesla, the V-Steg, and secret technology. Rainbows, oddly enough. They're trying to make the rainbow thing about the homosexuality too, but they're even hijacking that from how it's classically been used. I'll show you. But anyway, the fact of the matter remains that on the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara Falls, of all places, they launched this car into the border crossing, and it exploded. It caused this huge ruckus. It caused like a huge melting mess. Here's some of the footage, of the aftermath. You can't see much because it's just like a pile of mangled twisted steel. Just like when a battery-powered car, lithium-ion-powered battery car goes up, right? So this is all that's left of it, and it closed all this traffic down, and people. Oh, I think this is actually the video of when it happened. Yeah, here's the CCTV footage. So you can see the car back here. It starts back here. So once this comes up, you can see it coming right from over here where my cursor is. Out of control, launch. And you can see it right here. And explodes. It cuts away before the explosion happened there. But anyway, something's going on with that and the commandeering of cars, the ability to hack the EVs, the fact that they did this on the Rainbow Bridge. I haven't done the steganography of the gematria related to the dates or the events of it, because honestly, there's just so much context to this video, guys. I've got to go back probably even with some of these topics and find other more nuanced things to connect it. But I'm really just trying to keep it to the steganography, the bridges that are involved, and the fact that where was it? I had the announcement that they closed Niagara Falls for a state of emergency on the day of the eclipse too. Dun, 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 dun. Where is it? Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to find it here in a second. Because I forgot, I put some of this stuff out of order. But there was a news report where they called, oh, here it is. I found it. Thank God. All right. Have already reached the limit for free. Okay, whatever. The Epoch Times did a story about the state of emergency declared in Niagara Falls. I don't have a paid subscription anymore, apparently. But I'll leave the link nonetheless. It's all I really wanted to show you, that Niagara Falls is one of those towns that call the state of emergency on the eclipse. So we're going to start getting into the eclipse stuff here in a second. That's why I kind of had it out of order, because I hadn't probably planned on going over it there quite yet. But you remember, guys, Nikola Tesla spent a lot of time in Buffalo, created the hydroelectric dam, Niagara Falls, played a part in this. So there's a lot of VSTEG tied up in that area. There's this old photo of Buffalo. I still got to decode a little bit more, that has an Egyptian obelisk in it, just like the Washington Monument. This obelisk isn't there anymore, by the way. This is like, I don't know, it's like 1880s, or even early 1900s. I can't tell. It's still horse and buggy and cable cars. So it's there aren't any. It's not as late as like 1915 or anything, because you don't see any Model Ts or anything driving around. It's all horse-drawn carriages and buggies. But there's very much a significant aspect to the fact that the state of emergency was declared over that, partially also because, if I refresh this, you guys will see the eclipse path went over Niagara Falls. So why was it that everything during the eclipse was a state of emergency too, is the other thing you want to ask yourself. I'll leave that question hanging with you for just a second. But the car crashes in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara Falls on November 24th. The bridge collapse in Baltimore, and the bridge's network of Death Stranding. We're all connecting here, by the way. Remember, also look at this connection here, and this connection here on the Earth Grid Control Network, as drawn by Florida Maquis, goes right through Buffalo, as does one of these little prongs. Whoop, goes right through Buffalo. So Buffalo is key to understanding this ritual. The Bills played in even on the Super Bowl. If you recall, even in the Super Bowl video from a couple months back, the Bills, the wide right ritual, their 4 losses in a row, Dan Marino, Finkel is Einhorn, Ace Ventura, the transgender agenda, Jim Carrey in a mask, the green mask, remember, like the Wizard of Oz playing a part, who's the man behind the curtain, WrestleMania, all of these things have to do with the mind control, with Wizard of Oz, with VSTEG. So anyway, guys, these are the themes that we're setting up. This is kind of like the bump set spike of the way this video is going to go, because I got to show you the steg themes before we can tie it all together. But I think you get what I'm saying. Steganography with White Lion, steganography with the bridge collapse itself, steganography with the fact that it happened on the Mason-Dixon line underneath the key state, the Keystone State, Pennsylvania. When the Keystone State falls, remember what Super Bowl 55 was all about, the Keystone State. When the Keystone falls, the whole thing collapses. The reset can happen. The Mason-Dixon line is very significant to this. Perhaps also because, in addition to that, with the Mason-Dixon line, you have some other Dixon Bridge disasters from 1873, which I'll get into maybe in a different video because we just don't have the time. This happened over in Illinois. But it is connected to this in a way. Plus, we have the fact that the bridge on the Mason-Dixon line related to the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, is also where WrestleMania was. And we're going to get to WrestleMania too. But WrestleMania happened in the days leading up to the eclipse, the 6th and the 7th. and this ritual that they played out in the ring, all connected too. But perhaps the most curious thing, and curious is a word I have overused, but probably not enough in this situation, is that Thomas Pynchon and all of his novels with the V steganography, he literally has a novel called V, guys. Like, give me a break. I have that one, and I have the Mason-Dixon one, and I also have this one, which I need to get into. It's called Gravity's Rainbow. What the V-Stag is in these books, I will have to individually get to the bottom of. But he wrote a book about the creation of the Mason-Dixon line. He wrote a book about Gravity's Rainbow, which is called Gravity's Rainbow, which is about the space program, the secret technologies therein. I mean, look at this. If I just pull these things out here, I'll show you. So this is the main novel. It's pretty thick. He's a pretty well-renowned literature author. All of his books are very well-renowned. So it's not like he's unknown or anything. If you guys haven't heard of him, look him up. He seems to have the V-Cipher. I don't know if he's a Templar or what he is, like kind of Hideo Kojima, but there's literally an entirely another volume that is the companion to it, that is like all of the references to all of the technologies. There's the Saturn V rocket, for instance. Like, come on, guys. There's all of this stuff relating to the V-Stag rainbows. Was it Gravity's Rainbow? Remember, underneath the steganography and the mind control is technology, health, history, science, you name it. It's things that are out of phase for us that we can't quite see. And the spells are cast so deep that the memes control our minds, or so is our supposition. And what it seems these popular forms of media are all telling us. But guys, there's no coincidence here. If you've been around the block with this work enough, you know that this stuff is all planned. I've got to get into his work a lot more because it's not going to factor into any detail here. That's why I'm showing you. I just purchased that companion book so I could get into this stuff a little bit deeper. But there's something going on here. We haven't seen it yet. The thing is if you go and you look at some of the work that I've done, I don't put specific dates on this stuff. I put the late labor rituals, the calendrical rituals, what's being occluded. Today we might get into some territory where I do suppose some actual dates of what happens. But other than the actual demarcation lines of the resets, the winter solstice reset ritual and this last eclipse on April 8th, I only claim that these are significant markers for other things to start unfolding. It's always been the supposition of this channel that the Templars are casting these counterspells against the stuff that the Khazarians, what is known as, I don't know what you want to call them, Elohim sympathizers of the day, the Jesuits, pretty much like who we call them on this channel, or even more descriptive, the Fox faction, the casuistrists. The ones who are attempting to use these events for a more cosmically significant evil purpose. These are all things that, well, we're going to have to gain a better grasp of understanding on in the coming weeks and months. But again, we're Niagara Falls and the Rainbow Bridge, and it's using of one of the concepts from the Obama movie, and the Key Bridge connection with one of the concepts to the Obama movie, and the White Lion will factor in here in a sec. Before we do this, I want to go back to the eclipse itself. We're going to take a little bit of a detour and go back and show you some of the things that I was seeing a couple of years ago with what might be happening with the upcoming eclipse. We were talking about this very eclipse in reference point to all the other V-Stag stuff back in 2020. And there's a series, an anime series called Full Metal Alchemist. A lot of you have probably heard of it now if you have seen my work all the way through, or if you're just an anime fan in general. But it itself houses some of the key beats that we need to pay attention to in what these eclipse rituals can house for us moving forward. So I've got some timestamps down here. We're gonna go through some of these. the main points are the Boring Company and Elon Musk, this thing that we called Legion back in the day, and then the eclipse as it relates to the Wizard of Oz. But there's some freaky stuff in addition to what a lot of people were looking at as, I don't know why they were looking at it with the state of emergency claims that they were, but hey, let me see if I can zoom in on this one. No, this one's not going to let me zoom in. But people, I mean, what I'm trying to talk about here while I'm trying to multitask is that most people that were looking at the eclipse with some sort of conspiratorial mindset in place weren't looking at it for the ritual that it was. They're almost looking at it half-handedly, almost like the ancients used to be afraid of it just because it blocked out the sun and there was some sort of retribution from the gods or whatever they tell you that the ancients thought about these eclipses. I tend to think that we probably were a little bit smarter than your average bear, as they would probably, I keep saying the casuistrists, as the casuistrists have cast on us that viewpoint. But the ritual of it and what it portends for what they do, the casuistrists, along these ley lines, is apparent in the Full Metal Alchemist series. Throughout the days after the eclipse, I also caught wind of some of these things, like where along the path of totality, there are all of these different massacres. You can't see all of them probably with the resolution that's going on. I'll read them off to you, though. You've got the Finger Lakes right up here at the top. Finger Lakes is, of course, significant because that's where Hunter Biden's sexcapades with children originate out of. He's got a tattoo of it on his back. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's that. You've got the Buffalo mass shooting. Buffalo's in here again. You got East Palestine's train wreck that happened right here. Remember, Palestine's tied to the whole Gaza situation. I mean, that one was obvious, at least with the naming convention that they used for that. Then they've got the Kent State massacre that happened here. By the way, these didn't all happen in the last year. These are all spread out over long periods of time, because even you've got the JFK assassination even down here. So that one goes back to 1963. Then you've got the Paducah school shooting. I don't recognize the name of that one. Josenberg school shooting, Whitewater, Rose Law Firm, Bill Clinton's birthplace, Waco, Eagle Pass. So, Eagle Pass is, of course, significant for today with the immigration. So you have all these ritual components that you can even see, as people are pointing out, have been used over the years along this path. Huh, interesting. Well, you even have, I guess we don't need to get to that, but this is the one I wanted to get to. And you also had people noticing that in the days leading up to the eclipse, 16,000 lightning bolts were measured along the line of the path of totality, that the path of totality was to take, right in the middle of the country here. So what this is pointing out is the amount of energy that's obviously potential and that can spark literal lightning on the surface because of some extra buildup of capacitance and a release with resistance. There's the two fundamental properties of electricity, you can say, right? But these are interesting data points because these aren't obviously, this is ritual sacrifice in the path of the eclipse. And then this is extra potential energy being lined up along the ley lines structures that the eclipse covers. So whether we get into speculating if this was a below ground event or an above ground event or not, I just want to point a couple of these things out before we get into the video that I did a couple years back. Now, to tee this thing up, kind of a creepy thing from Dom Lucre. A lot of the guys on Dom Lucre's account on X follow him for a lot of the child trafficking stuff. He's become a regular on Alex Jones show. But a couple of days ago, he posted this video, and isn't it funny how these videos are always just so grainy? I mean, it sucks that you can't get better footage. Even with all the good cameras you have today, it's interesting that it comes out nonetheless. But I can't validate the authenticity of this. It did remind me of the Full Metal Alchemist eclipse foretelling circumstances, or the circumstances that the show foretold, said a better way. And this was when did he post this? So this is just April 9th. This was the day after the eclipse, and apparently he's saying this disturbing footage is going viral. Some users say it was a secret footage of a cloning facility in Canada, and he says he can't believe that these are masks. So, you know, you do without the creepy music, but obviously these things are hooked up to some sort of hook. They're lifeless bodies. Are they mannequins? What are they, right? Are they robots? They're husks of humanoids. And again, beyond just the visual footage you have here, there's rows and rows and rows of these. I can't tell if you can I don't know. Your mind can go crazy speculating on what it is. But we do have, like I said, a template for what at least the elites might want to do with eclipse energy. And it was highlighted in my series here. Just a second. Alchemist. So the Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah, here I am from a couple of years ago. Here we go. So starting at about right here. So before I even get going on this, some of the, what do you call it, primer that you might want to know about the period of time that we're going through on this. As we were talking in this episode about CERN, how CERN was involved with the booting up of what was being depicted in the Full Metal Alchemist show as these big casting circles. They call them alchemy circles, I think, in the series. Pretty sure they just call them alchemy circles. But the idea is that CERN was a company that bore a big tunnel under the ground, right? And they built a big Hadron Collider in it. People know this. This has actually become a hot button even around the eclipse too, because it booted back up, and that's part of what we're going to get into here. But CERN is this big facility that has a tunnel underground that has been dug, and the energy currents are forced through with this Hadron Collider. Whatever methodology used to create that energy, it's there. We know about it, and we know that they do this underground in a ring. CERN isn't the only one of these facilities. It's the best known about. It's not even necessarily the biggest, probably, if they have other ones. They don't probably understand the ether very well because we can't really, the wonkiness of how the ideas are applied at CERN and how they want to create portals and create these rituals to create portals to bring out demonic forces. I don't really think that they grasp what they can and can't do with that barrier. It's part of this Elohim madness of these folks. But we were talking about it at that time too, and it was relevant to the video that we were doing around it, or that I was doing and telling you guys about. And CERN factored into this very decode of it relative to the eclipse. But in this first clip, all I want you guys to pay attention to is the Legion
of that.
So
clip. We got to get
check this out. Please, sir. In this clip, as I will walk through, there is a commander of the army. The army is kind of like a Nazi organization in this show. Like they very much operate like the German contingent of the Nazi forces would have. I mean, it's very much kind of depicting that whole ethos with their appearance and their existence in this show. So they're trying to paint this as like an evil thing anyway, that they're bringing about these legions of dead. But here, I'll let this kind of unfold, and I'll let you guys watch this scene, and then we'll talk about it afterward.
Please, sir, don't! We still haven't finished the soul bonding tests!
Shut up! What else are we gonna use them? Ugh. This is the exact kind of situation we worked so hard to make them for!
The situation he's talking about,
If you guys see what's
the situation he's talking about, by the way, guys, is the eclipse itself. To capture the energy of the eclipse, things are happening beyond their control in the plot line, and that's the situation he's talking about.
happening there, they've got philosopher's stones suspended in those tubes that they're animating these bodies with.
Go, now! Teach those treacherous rebels a lesson!
So he animates them, right? Here's the undead army. From the husks they put life into.
So basically, what just happened was the undead army was awoken. That's the end of that episode. I'm just going to be fast forwarding here to the.
So you don't need to watch myself go through too much of that, actually. But so you guys get the point. The show is depicting, to line up with an eclipse that's happening, the awakening of an undead army that looks suspiciously like it came right out of Dom Lucre's post, which happened right after the eclipse. The reanimation of these people in the show was due to what they're calling the Philosopher's Stone, this alchemical concept where you can dilute consciousness of humans and, like seat them in a soul of your choosing. The whole series was based around all of the alchemical concepts where the homunculus, the maps of the human psyche were all broken up and fought against individually. Greed, greed, wrath, lust. Why can't I even think about the 7 deadly sins? Gluttony, sloth. All of these characters embodied in the show various homunculi maps to the human psyche. This was also one of those indications that this was a very V-Stag-esque show and what it was telling us. But why is the eclipse factored in with these undead legion? I talked more in that episode. I went on to describe that the legion is in the Bible. Jesus talks about the legion of the masses after the fall being inconsolable or unreachable, basically. I'm paraphrasing, and there are passages in Matthew and Luke, as I go on to describe in that passage in that clip also. But this legion of undead army, they go in the show at least, they go to devour, almost cannibalize like zombies, the masses. So I don't know what's going on at all with this clip, guys, but it was in the Stag, and I had to show you. So there's our first point from this episode. Our second point is gonna come at where is it at? Oh yeah, the eclipse itself. Let's fast forward. Here's the point in the show where the eclipse is happening. So the eclipse in this show has been awaited for a long period of time. This character here is basically the Wedico virus. Ahriman's Wedico virus that's infecting the understanding of the psyche. Thinks he can control God, thinks he is God. It's the hubris. It's like the incarnate hubris of everything. What he's doing is he's capturing the eclipse energy. Let's see if I can go through this to create these big transmutation circles like so. I'll put this into play here. See these transmutation circles as seen from space in the show. These, like CERN in the Full Metal Alchemist show, were dug underground. So there was the character called Sloth. Oh, I'm so bored. This is boring. He's always saying this is boring. He's very like lumbering. He hates that just has to dig these tunnels. And that's the homunculus that they have dig the tunnels. The boring homunculus, the sloth homunculus, lines right up with the steganography for the Boring Company. Elon Musk's Boring Company. Musk is deeply involved in a lot of these V-steganography, mind control memes, guys. I mean, Tesla is the company. The Teslas from the movie the world, Leave the World Behind being hijacked and used as weapons. The one that looks like it was a Tesla. They say it was like a Bentley or something. It doesn't look like a Bentley from the footage that I showed you all. You can be your own judge by looking at the link I provide to watch that video. But I don't think that it was a Bentley. I think it was an EV. I think it was a Tesla that was launched into the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara Falls. But as the show goes, the Leyline Network, the Earth Grid Control Network, remember the Earth Grid Control Network from Bridges, Florida Maquis work, and the Leyline networks that we talk about being on the Full Metal Alchemist series, as dug by Boring, the sloth. The eclipse energy was attempted to be this Wetico character was trying to capture the energy from the eclipse, use it in conjunction with the Leyline energy underneath it to overcome and become more powerful than God. It's very much like the Elohim's thing. It doesn't quite go the way he wants it to. He does reach his final form or whatever in this very he turns from that black looking mass into this kind of representation of Lucifer or Armon, as we were talking about. Lucifer seems like he was just a really badass Elohim. I didn't quite understand that back when I did this decode, but it does. It's very much the Luciferian caricature, as you see in the depiction of things, which Rudolf Steiner in his lecture V also equates to the harmonic energy, right? So it's very much it's on the same thread of what's being hidden here. But the point is that he's thought that he's won. And unfortunate for him, the Templar representation with Hohenheim was the character's name, which really is a representation of Paracelsus, the alchemist, the famous alchemist. The story of the Full Metal Alchemist just casts him into this role here in this modern, semi-modern time where he's fighting against the forces of the Wetico virus on the planet. And wouldn't you know it, that he uses the shadow of the moon itself as a counterspell, its own transmutation circle against that Wetico virus, and he frees the souls of the people that were trapped. He frees the souls of the people that were trapped. So this is kind of very much a representation, an allegory, a metaphor for the alchemical process of the counterspell that I think the Templars try and cast on these events, on these days of these events. Because for all intents and purposes, the catastrophes that people were planning for, the states of emergency that people were planning for on the day of the eclipse, first of all, they never came to light. Did things happen where, the powers that be tried to put stuff like this into place? I don't know. We won't know because all this stuff is underground. And also the fact that, here's the other funny thing, CERN booting back up the day of the eclipse. This was freaking people out. as it relates to the Full Metal Alchemist series, though, and the rituals of carving your own transmutation circles underneath the surface of the earth to cast spells with, to capture energy from the eclipse and use for your own means. I mean, remember, guys, if this stuff happens by ritual and this stuff happens by way of actual energy manifestation along the lines, there is both psychological and physical potential power with whatever is happening along these eclipse lines. And there's probably an occult reason to try and capture and alter the opinions and mindsets and memes of the way people look at the world through predictive programming and all sorts of methods to occlude what's really happening, what the real purpose of these eclipses are. But CERN booted back up on April 8th. We had an interesting occurrence that happened with a ritual sacrifice where that very same day that the Large Hadron Collider was put into practice, the guy that named the God particle, as they call it, that's funny, right? The God particle, Higgs boson, Peter Higgs, died at age 94. No, I don't have the gematria or anything done with this. I simply thought it was funny that as a ritual sacrifice on April 8th, the same day that CERN booted back up, the same day that the eclipse occurred, the same day represented in the Full Metal Alchemist series, that we have some controlling of the mindset happening. The steganography is deep. These attempts at controlling our perspective on what's really happening are starting to get hilarious, at least in this community. I still think that these things have a very, very deep and profound effect on the minds of the normies, though, guys. We're not through this war yet. There are very few of us that see this stuff in this way. And it's hard for me to even put language to it sometimes because it's so broad, and we've got to dilute it now with enough focus these days that I appreciate you all for following along in the journey, to say the least. Now, Constantin Mile has some choice things to say about this process in this book. I'm going to get into it in a sec. He covers the eclipse and some dynamics of what happened during the eclipse that I'll get into here, and why this event might be a little bit more powerfully potential for being used for positive or negative reasons than you might think. But before that, there's one more clip from this that I have to show you. Because if you guys remembered, I guess two more clips. If you guys remember at the very end of the show, after they defeat the Lucifer character, they reintegrate Ed back into Ed's brother back into his body because he lost his body at the beginning. So here he is coming back out of the ether where he was kind of imprisoned for the entire series. Oops. Here he is. Sorry, guys. So here's Edward. And here's his brother. After the eclipse ritual completes and they win, they beat, and they kind of they win this battle with the Lucifer character. He reunites with his girlfriend Wimley, and his brother is a broken up piece of armor because, if remember, his brother was reduced to being his soul was attached to that armor because they lost his body in this experiment. The great Sephiroth tree was opened, and his brother's spirit comes back through. And through all of it, after they enter back out of the doors from the spiritual realm, they wake up.
Like when Dorothy comes out of the dreamscape of the Wizard of Oz, too. Wakes up and sees all of her friends there. So this is actually where we're leaving the Full Metal Alchemist series, because the rest of the next...
Right. There you go, guys. There you go. I think I missed the part where he wakes up out of it here. Let's just watch. I already explained. This is kind of like when Dorothy wakes up. Oh, I was in a dream state, you know?
Hey, he's waking up. How are you feeling? You okay?
Zampano and Darius.
There you go. This is just the same as the Wizard of Oz stuff when he's coming out of that stupor, right? But anyway, so hard cut from this. I want to get into the Konstantin Mile book. Because before we go and implicate some of these other further concepts as they relate to how we can break things apart in the news, I want to explain a little bit of what Konstantin Mile tells us about the dynamics of these solar eclipses, why they're so important, and why we need to probably treat them with a little bit of seriousness as it relates to capturing energies, maybe pointing energies in a nefarious way against the populace. So let me mute this mic here. All right, so we're going to get rid of the Magic of Oz book just for a second and focus again on the Scalar Waves book by Konstantin Mile. This is something we've referenced a lot in the past relative to the Earth Grid Network, with the obvious conclusions, as you guys might recall, even back just from the last episode, we're drawing of these cathedrals or cathedrals being placed on the key ley line points, harmonic resonances created within, each one of them very specifically tuned to the pentagonal frequency and the phi ratio, and what the phi ratio's significance to, you know, inserting some influence on our perception and how one might do that and how one might cause that frequency. So this is the ground we covered in the last few episodes, but the eclipse, back to the eclipse, and what Konstantin Mile has to say about that relative to his understanding of the ether. And he's measured effects, by the way, to reach the conclusions that we're going to just very briefly gloss through before we get back to the symbolic stag and the culture side of things. But this is back in the 90s, the late 90s. I think this book came out in 1999, and he had studied the ecliptic paths of complete totality over the course of of quite a few of these events. And in specific, he was fascinated to find that the spike in neutrino count, or the concentration in neutrino count, as focused as if by way of a lens around the moon, and this effect that it caused, almost like a magnifying glass creating a focal point from the sun and burning a leaf or an ant like children do. He was likening it to this effect. And in fact, when as he paints, with these paths of totality, right, over different parts of the world, he's not just studying the United States, he's looking at all of these. He is diagramming the concentration of the neutrinos away from the center focal point relative to these fluctuations in wavelength. He's got a logarithmic graph here, and how you read this is top-down view of the path of totality of a solar eclipse. The darker the circle, the higher the concentration in neutrinos. And away from the center here, you get some fluctuations about the mean. This is just baseline, 100% what we might be exposed to on the Earth's surface on a daily basis without a solar eclipse happening, or any sort of strong astrological happening. In fact, you can probably measure these lens effects with Mercury retrogrades and stuff. He doesn't go into it that deeply in this book. He just shows the effect of a solar eclipse and the neutrino count. But he does show, based on this graph, you can see, like I said, it's logarithmic. It goes from 100% to 200%, 400, 800, 1600 to 3200%. So 3200% more concentration of neutrinos at the center of a solar eclipse than would be the norm. Neutrinos, as he goes into in great extent in his health books, as we're going to get into here in just a sec, are kind of the key to understanding a lot of the bioelectric field in the human structure that we don't acknowledge in popular science. So I'm going to put this to bed for a sec. I'm going to mute this mic. come back to the main mic here. Back into the network. Yeah. Sorry about all this jiggering, guys. I need to get another condenser mic that has a little bit better audio quality on it. But for now, over at the reading station, that's what I got. So without getting too in the weeds with the neutrino stuff, he's got another book I wanted to bring up relative to some of this stuff that makes some of the mind control stuff that we went into in the last videos, of course, a little bit more cohesive in terms of our understanding with what might also be attempted with the spell casting, with the dark arts, you know, the Brothers of Belial, the casuistrists, the Jesuit class, here at these times of the eclipse. And in conjunction with, some understandings of the health system itself. So here we go. I've got this pulled up. Bring this up here. There we go. There we are. Okay, so this is another one of Konstantin Miles' books. It's called DNA and Cell Resonance. I'm on page 14 here. Let me show you the cover of this thing. So this is the cover of the book. I'll get my face out of the way here while we're talking about this. The cover of the book, he wrote this pretty much around the same time that he was doing the lectures roundabout with the scalar waves. He also wrote this one called Self-Consistent Electrodynamics, the unified theory of evolving discovered potential vortex replaces the vector potential in the dielectric. So he's using all this language that you guys have heard, even we cover on the channel through the work of Ken Wheeler and all of the magnetic theorists over the years. Konstantin Miles is, I think, probably one of the most brilliant and underrepresented in the field. I don't know why that necessarily is, but he seems to be on par with James Clerk Maxwell and Oliver Heaviside and even Roger Boscovich, who he references the work of all the time, along with Tesla. But these editions, even though these were contemporary to his scalar wave theories, these didn't get published actually in English until like 2010. So anyway, some of this is not going to be very surprising to you, but he actually shows the very core structure of DNA. He talks about the shapes and the theories of the binding of the amino acids. But as you guys can see, down at our core DNA level, we actually do have pentagonal and hexagonal interlocking components, even with the amino acids. So, I mean, it's no mistake that the mind control components to, that interoperate with the buckyball form. If we just go back to the buckyball stuff, right? Interlocking pentagons and hexagons. This concept is key to understanding that the template is there for these shapes within us, within our Earth, within the harmonic balance that we have between us. We've gone into this in the past on this channel too, with the Merkaba energy and the Christ, and how that is really what's unlocking in this age, what Jesus was prompting with his teachings all the way back when. And in some way, it all relates to this Earth grid frequency ley line network. And there's a lot of power in influencing and attempting to control the minds by way of this. The stadiums, the temples, we've gone over this. These are why the rituals and the Super Bowls and all these things are connected, and why it's so weird that the Bridges Network and Die Hardman and the Chiefs and all 7 of the last Super Bowls have been tied to some sort of reset with finance right at the heart of it, right? Konstantin Miles even goes into some of that finance stuff in his other book that's up here, and how that's interrelated with the psychic key. But I wanted to point out that there's a lot more that we're going to dig into with Konstantin Miles in the future. But also here on page 17, he also describes how the example of water actually carries a gigahertzian frequency of 22.2 degrees. Again, let me get my face out of the way. I highlighted it right there. 22.2 gigahertz. And this is key to the understanding of, again, the spectrum of harmony that we've witnessed just within the pentagonal structure, because each one of these triangular wedges is an H2O molecule. You can think of it as it's the exact angular representation of the geometry of water, one of these harmonic edges. And there are 3 of them. This is where Tesla's 369 comes from. You can see all of this code within the subtext of the steganography as to what's really gone after for controlling our perception with frequency, guys. This is where it all piles in and matters. We don't have time to get into all of Konstantin Miles' stuff in the depth that I want to today. But as we've done before with his work, it's key to the understanding of this. And it's truly key to the understanding of the heart of what the magnitude of this whole psyop on our mind could be, involving the planet of Saturn, involving another race of aliens, maybe more. And what the ritual that is trying to be arrested by way of, what was being depicted in the Full Metal Alchemist, and truly the dark arts that attempt to use that concentrated neutrino energy that Konstantin Miles elaborates on in his books. It's not hard, therefore, to speculate on why these cults that are way into the dark magic of things would attempt to use that heightened energy that the rest of us aren't aware of to their advantage. Are they trying to raise the dead, like Dom Lucre pointed out, and as it actually shows in the Full Metal Alchemist cartoon? I don't know. I do know that everything lines up with the Wizard of Oz, as we've shown. But that's pretty much the only conclusion we can draw so far. I'll continue to look into what that concentrated neutrino energy can do to our minds, but this is really, again, boils down to this shape right here. So what we want to do is move on from this slightly, and you guys want to see how things relate with the Emerald City, Oz coming apart, and WrestleMania, right? To continue the themes from the last video. So before we go there, I do want to close out the whole bridges thing with the shipping container, because in another one of my videos, House of M, Hex on Humanity, Templar Reset, Ritual, Morning Sickness, I'm going to play a few minutes of my video from back here. I'll get my face again, my live face out of the way, so you guys can see back in the day, a couple years ago, when we were talking about the Suez Canal and the ritual of its shipping container fiasco. And what connections this might have to the eclipse ritual, why this bridges ritual happened there in Baltimore with this very specific Mason-Dixon line connotation to it. Here's a little bit more context for what was going on back then and why we're still living through these themes 2 years removed from each other. Remember, that's the when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl and blah, blah, yada, 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 yada. There was all these connections with these times forecast ahead of time.
An evergreen ship plugging up
Here we
the
go.
Suez Canal ship lane. And then Goose says, interesting, that's the significance of ever given in this context, because the clog in the canal is more like ever without. And I said, yeah, I'm not.
So here, I'll give a couple more pieces of context. By the point in this video, we're discussing the point that the Suez Canal is actually where the Red Sea parted, where Moses parted the Red Sea in the Bible. And we're getting into the gematria context of the PSYOP. The shipping container ever given, if you guys don't remember this, by the way, slowed down all of the shipping lanes at the time. Just like, excuse me, I might need some water here, just a sec. And that's exactly what I needed. My throat was starting to get scratchy. Just like the shipping lanes with the Baltimore Bridge fiasco, the Key Bridge fiasco, the Keystone Bridge fiasco is playing out right now. We have had a similar worldwide shipping shortage at the time. It specifically prevented me from getting all sorts of different tools and electronics and stuff that were on order for a while. And it was, you felt the effect of it. It only lasted until this thing was cleared up. But it was certainly a ritual that that connected with the dots. So I actually, so I don't have to hear myself be more long-winded than I have to, I am just going to go through it with you. I ran some gematria on these values at the time, and they're consistent with now. 56 at the time was consistent with Super Bowl 56. So if I had to run similar numbers against the bridge, which I haven't had the time to do, I would imagine I'd see still a lot of 88s, because 88s were all about the eclipse. Remember, the ecliptic pattern that these things take through the sky looks like this, guys. So if you're going to view the moon and the sun about the sky throughout the year, they would both make a figure 8 in the sky. Put that both together, you get 88. This is kind of a spell casting norm of this subset of VSTEG symbolic mimetic control. You find these values a lot, as we've seen throughout the work, especially with the summer solstice, the winter solstice reset ritual. And we ran through Holy Roman Empire, Blood Moon Sacrifice, Race Wars, U.S. Civil War II, the USA, Star Spangled Banner, Jewish. These things all have these values of 88. These are all the themes that are still playing out today, if you've noticed. The populace is more aware of these items with this shipping container ritual now than ever before. As we showed, right? That's kind of indicative of this, where the population is actually seeing the steganography for the first time. They don't quite get as deeply as we do with the steg, but they are at least, or with the V-steg specifically, but they are recognizing some base level of steganography that's hidden with the messaging on this stuff. So back to this. This was the shipping container ritual back then. This is what the situation looked like in the Suez Canal. It basically just ran aground into the side of where the dredging was at its deepest, so it couldn't move. And it just cattywampus like blocked the shipping lanes. The gematria was also indicating a lot of the solar ritual. 108 degrees obviously is also part of the pentagonal structure, but 108 Earths would fit in the diameter of the sun. 108 suns is the distance of our Earth between our orbit of Earth and the sun on an average basis, because it's somewhat elliptical. It's not always 108. But 108 moons are said to be between, or 108 diameters of the moon are said to be between us and the actual object of the moon. I don't know how you measure this very accurately without knowing that's exactly how big those objects are. The moon's the one that's in contention the most. But I wanted you guys to see that even briefly, back here, a couple of years ago, we were calling out these shipping container rituals. We were even tying them back then to the Death Stranding stuff, because that's what's so interesting about the Death Stranding stuff, is that it's all about clogged shipping lanes, clogged metempsychoses, mind lanes, like almost like a hijacked soul process, like a soul recycling process is what it infers. And is that what Ahriman's got going on with us down here in the eighth sphere, is what we've speculated on before. So anyway, guys, this is tough to tough to comprehend, again, if you haven't come to this stuff in the past. But before we wrap up the show and get into the Emerald City psyop of WrestleMania 40 and show you guys how all that concluded and how it absolutely is part of this unveiling and reset process, we're going to find out what's in space, what the money supply situation is, the correct calendar. But somehow Hollywood and the people within the Templars are finding very subtle ways to implant stuff in reference to the age to come also. I don't know if you guys are aware yet, but I've left this on screen just to see if you guys can pick up on some of the themes relating to this truck here, what's written on it, and some of the themes that we're talking about with this reset and the actual truth of our history. We just talked about the white lion on the side of the shipping container in the Obama movie, Leave the World Behind. And we've tied it to the Rainbow Bridge. So, and the Mason-Dixon Line Key Bridge. Mason-Dixon novel and the Gravity's Rainbow novel. Remember, Alice in Wonderland, or not Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz. When Dorothy goes into Oz, it goes from black and white to rainbow. You've got all this stuff wrapped up in it, okay? So how does she get there? Dorothy gets to Oz, of course, by the tornado that comes and lifts her up in Kansas. Kansas City, Chiefs won the Super Bowl, Die Hardman. The Bridges network across America goes right through Kansas City. And not only that, we have this movie, Twisters, that we haven't yet analyzed, that also came out during the Super Bowl. Twisters, tornadoes, right? At a minute and 25 seconds into the video, what do you guys see? You see one of the storm chasing trucks. This is obviously, too, like, just as a little bit of a preamble, this is a sequel to the first Twister movie that came out in the 90s. It's with Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt. I think you guys probably know that movie. And in it, it even had some nods to the Wizard of Oz. So this one, obviously, is going to have even, as we approach the event horizon of Oz Falling, is going to have some of the same themes. White lion. The truck is white, and it says lion on the back of it here. Zoom in on your screens if you can't see it. But it matches this, first and foremost. Okay? Forget about the fact that the Twisters are how we get to Oz also, but White Ram, it's also Aryans, the Ares planet Mars, the history of Mars. And the White Lion is, again, the age of Leo, the actual age we're going into that Oz is occluding. We have to get to Oz, the true get past the veil of Oz for the true understanding of things. And we've decoded all this with the Steg, guys. I mean, look how nuttily correct Bridges Networks, Age of Leo, the Aryan age of our past, with our Aryan ancestry represented by the ram in the zodiac. We're going into war. The Aryan symbol of, Ares is the god of war, governs the planet of Mars. All these things we know. But wouldn't you know it, right there, very subtly, also Super Bowl ad. There are two versions of this trailer. It's funny, too, because remember, the Super Bowl this year was 2/11, on February 11th, so and 2 times 11 is 22. So there was a lot of Easter egg that was coming out in the commercials. But in particular, if you guys notice this, too, just like in the first movie, they name their apparatus Dorothy. And on the side of Dorothy, they've got a V. It's Dorothy 5. These are these sensor containers. If you remember from the first movie, they did the same thing in this trailer where they send these sensors up. The tornado captures them and it twirls them all around. And it gives them like the readout in the shape of the twister. I think this is hilarious too. Like the green energy is getting torn apart. So the whole green energy agenda coming apart is all forecast here in these brief scenes that they've got in this movie too. But yeah, guys, back to the white lion and the white ram that they're driving. The symbolism is just in this one little clip is deep. Dorothy 5. Dorothy 5. V Dorothy. And the tornadoes that get you to Oz. So we didn't cover this a ton during the Super Bowl, but here we are. The Pathway to Oz. This movie comes out, by the way, our arrival to Oz, and this is where there we go. this is where I will say, like, July 19th. July 19th is highlighted here, also in the IMDb page as the expected release date. This, because the tornado, this is using my this is using my steganographic predictive powers here. I think that on that date, July 19th, that might be like our arrival to Oz somehow, or arrival with the rainbow. We're going to see things more clearly in color. The veil of Oz will be lifted. The poppies that surround the Emerald City and occlude our minds from seeing things clearly. Somehow by then, these eclipse energies will have built up. The storm will be over, and the tornado will drop us in Oz like it dropped Dorothy. And just like in the perceptive framework of the V-Stag, and you know what they're showing us here with the V Dorothy, it's our senses, guys. Our senses are going to awaken more as a collective. I think, you know, we in this community were already here anyway. It's just somehow more people are going to arrive here by way of the events that are going to transpire. And I do think, again, this is Templar framework, steganography, messaging, letting us know the counter spells that are in play. Most of the stuff that's of Oz seems to be that way. It's like, these are the days we're going to wake up. We're going to come out of the wizardry spell then. So it's interesting, right? So July 19th is a key day for seeing whatever outcome of these energies that we're now passed through and all these themes of reset that we will have to wait for, well, we would have had to wait for, are finally going to be coming to fruition. This is my supposition. We'll see how correct I really am with that. But yeah, July 19th. Mark it on your calendars as something crazy happening. So another marker day on your calendar before we get to the WrestleMania stuff. This is crazy, guys. The election day, by the way, this year is Guy Fawkes Day, November 5th. Last time it was on November 5th was when Bill Clinton was elected in 96 against Bob Dole and Ross Perot. Here it is this year, though. The 2024 presidential election calendar, November 5th. Remember the 5th of November, guys. Guy Fawkes Day. Can't stress enough how significant it is that the election this year, if it really is an election, I mean, look at all of the spell casting that can be done with November 5th as the election day. Will there be one? Probably. I don't think so, as I've supposed for a while. But alongside it, Donald Trump is just because, the spell casting that was done with this Transgender Day of Visibility. Of course, our friend Jim Carrey playing Joe Biden. Jim Carrey in a mask playing Joe Biden. Follow the White Rabbit. The one who brought us the Transgender Day of Visibility originally in the Ace Ventura movie. See my last Super Bowl decode video with Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn. Just a sec, guys. I have a sneeze. My apologies. Allergies. Allergy season still. Anyway, where were we? Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. Oh, yes. And Jim Carrey playing Joe Biden. Oh, I think, we missed the point, too. I didn't elaborate enough on in the last video I did. This one here, the one where we really dug into a little bit the whole Jim Carrey psyop. It's owed more time than we were able to dedicate to it too, but I think one thing's for certain, the coincidence that Jim Carrey retired acting right as the whole fake administration started, that being just too coincident with the appearance of a different Joe Biden than the real one. It's just too funny, guys. But because of all the transgender visibility spells with the Ace Ventura movie, in connection with the Super Bowl, we have this declaration by Trump that it'll be Christian Visibility Day on the 5th. So is this coded language for the Christians shining light on their own religion to look at the Jesuits? Will the Christians assist the Jewish communities in doing the same for both of their religions and self-investigating the allegiance to the Elohim that both Abrahamic faiths hold? You know, there's a lot to overcome here, guys. Jesus was a rebel in more ways than we can comprehend, and as I've described with the work, it's really Jesus's teachings from the New Testament side of things. A very limited subset of his teachings actually were in the New Testament, but those are really the only things we can derive much from, because the Old Testament was the Elohim subjugating all of these masses. So is that what we're finally going to find? Are we going to find that by November 5th, the Visibility Day, it's funny, it's a Visibility Day, right? Another V word. On November 5th, Visibility Day. What are we going to find out? What are we going to shine a light on? Are we going to realize the Guy Fawkes agenda? Time will tell. Anyway, back to the Steg. Peacemaker and Black Adam, two DC characters, were showcased at this year's WrestleMania 40. Not in the way you would think. It was the actors that played them. But we went into our last video showing that currently in wrestling, you've got these two characters duking it out for top supremacy. You've got Roman Reigns, and remember, even in my referential video that I just showed from the last time we looked at a shipping container fiasco a couple years back, one of the terms that I was looking at here was the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire. If we're going to see a reset of things, the Holy Roman Empire, symbolized by Roman Reigns, has got to fall. Cody Rhodes, who's called the American Nightmare, I mean, his whole thing, by the way, like let me see here. Here we go. This is the video that they came in with here. Well, this is just the promo video. Here we go. These are the final videos here. So, yeah, right here. So the Undertaker comes in and beats him, but I didn't think I got this thing. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry, guys. I thought I had the videos all loaded up through this. These are just the results. I actually should have had this backwards. So these were the results of the whole thing. Line these up backwards. Here's the actual clip I was looking for. It's getting long in the tooth today, sorry. And it's Mercury retrograde. So words are actually coming out a little bit less fluidly as they normally would. But remember WrestleMania. If you recall back, WrestleMania being in Philadelphia, all the green symbolism, this was the Emerald City matchup. WrestleMania 40. It's the first time that Triple H has taken over for the writing and the organization of things. Vince McMahon's gone, and they have this new initiative where they're pushing Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare. And Cody Rhodes, when his entrance comes in, by the way, he's got this song, which is his entrance song. It's called Kingdom. And it's by Downstate. But even the cover of whatever the single is looks like Cody Rhodes' getup that he's going on right here. And it's all about freedom, I am the kingdom, blah, blah, blah. Perhaps we can do like an Ozzy Osbourne style deep dive into lyrics at some point, but I wanted to point out mostly the stag and the symbolism as it relates to his getup, the tie-in of the song itself. It's called Kingdom, and like a Statue of Liberty Luciferian thing going on. Statue of Liberty, Lucifer crown. I think there's probably going to be a comparison of this. Yeah, people talk about the Luciferian symbolism and liberty. The difference between liberty being and freedom is that liberty is brought to you by the state, right? Liberty is dictated to you by democracy. Democracy is mob rule. You don't really want unadulterated democracy, in my opinion. Everyone fights for it. Everybody wants it. And the whole spell that the stag would indicate people are under is that, you know, all of the crowd is rallied behind Cody Rhodes and this symbolism. It's the fake Q psyop. I know my view on Q is very nuanced. As you all know, I think Q was an actual thing for the first 6 months, where there was a genuine force behind the questions asking, basically, of leading into what was going on in the underground of the underbelly of the world. But it's been co-opted ever since those first 6 months. And the normies are still eaten into this whole liberty concept, hook, line, and sinker. So that's the first thing you see with the whole Cody Rhodes entrance, like his whole American nightmare personage. And, you know, look, he looks like a space marine from, what is it? The Warhammer 40,000 series. You know, with the eagles, and it's just kind of like the over-the-top regalia. He's even got his tattoo. He comes in here, he's got his cape, and Roman Reigns comes in. And spare you the details throughout the rest of the match, Cody Rhodes wins, and Roman Reigns, whose reign of the Universal Championship lasted the longest of anybody of all time at 1,316 days. I have to look up the significance of that record. Numerologically, like I said, I didn't have much time to do a ton of the gematria work for this particular video, but nonetheless, 1316. 1316 was how many days that he held the Universal title until Cody Rhodes took it back from him, or won it from him. So there's this whole subtext with this story, but the thing is, guys, is the Donald Trump visage here, which represents Space Force. Remember, I mean, here's all our Wizard of Oz themology from our past, but Space Force. Donald Trump and Space Force are synonymous. And remember the Space Force tweets that I shared from the Super Bowl. This was the first year that the Space Force had a color guard in the Super Bowl represented. So in the eyes of the culture, they're now not a secret arm of the military. They're in the limelight of the military. So there's something that is now upon us that is signified by a lot of this stuff. And Trump's faction, as represented here with the liberty, as they're trying to paint with even the liberty winning, you've got all the trappings for a psyop to take place on November 5th. How Trump will be involved, I don't know. But again, this is all Wizard of Oz ritual, guys. This is all Wizard of Oz ritual. The Rock came back in the next day because he was part of the losing match of it, by the way. And I don't know what this portends. This is the day of the eclipse. This is on the 8th, the day after WrestleMania transpired. Cody Rhodes has already got the belt. Remember, The Rock was part of the faction of the tribal chief of Roman Reigns, because it's his cousin. He and his Versace vests that he was wearing, and the Cupid and Psyche statue that he had on one of them. We went into that in the last episode. But he basically indicates that the story between he and Cody Rhodes is not over. What does this mean for the battle of the mind between now and then? Is The Rock, like, as Dwayne Johnson, going to run for president? I don't know. I don't know what this is. But, you know, they had very clearly Cody Rhodes dressed up in his Donald Trump kind of like hero garb and facing him down and basically showing him who's boss. You're the final boss, but I'm your champion, basically. Is this whole, you know, mouthing off situation. So the result of the match between these guys, I think I can find it, but I don't really know if I want to, because it doesn't, like, John Cena came in at some point. I don't need to show him coming in as the Peacemaker, but it even says, like, The Rock walked down to give us, let's see here. Where is it? I think I can find it, probably. Yeah, it's probably not worth it. It isn't. It really isn't. I don't want to spend too much time on the wrestling stuff. But to close it out, like to bring it back to these two things, there is some DC connection. Remember, DC Parasite Network, DC Comics, Detective Comics, Batman at the heart of so much of the steg. Black Adam, played in the movies by Dwayne Johnson, and Peacemaker, played by John Cena, both made appearances in the ring at the same time against each other. So, interesting happening that I will have to, again, do some more piecing together with. But in addition to everything happening around this time, again, with The Rock saying things aren't over between he and Cody Rhodes, he removes himself from his endorsement of Biden. Weird shit, right? Weird stuff. See, what kind of Oz preparation is he preparing himself for, right? I don't know. It's interesting to me that that at this time he's trying to distance himself, because it's, what is it? Is it either going to be he or Big Mike that go up against Trump in this fake election that's not going to yield an actual result? I don't know, guys. I don't know what the future holds exactly in that capacity. But moving on. In other news, more sports news, more Super Bowl related news. Yeah, God, everybody wants me to unlock my ads. Da-da-da. This man died today in his Las Vegas home. O.J. Simpson. This just happened this morning. Breaking news. I was later to getting to my recording, actually, than I wanted to, because this all factored in. Remember, guys, but everybody knows him from the trial. Of the 22 stab wounds, 22 stab wounds with his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, died by somebody's hand. I don't even know if it was OJ, honestly. It looks to me like, and this is my opinion, and I'm not going to substantiate this in this video because it would take us off course, but I think of the crimes they were accused of, Bill Cosby and O.J. Simpson, at least looking at the steganography of them both, I don't know if they did what they did. I can't say that there wasn't a control file on them, that they did some other shit that was held over their head, and they were made complicit to go through the process and go to prison the way they did to take the fall as a ritual or something. I won't deny that that's probably the case, but I think they were scapegoated into these ritualistic scenarios, both he and Bill Cosby. So the fact that today O.J. Simpson dies is kind of interesting. He was living in Las Vegas, which was connected to the Earth Grid Control Network, as we talk about as far as the Florida Maquis was able to identify, which I kind of agree with his assessment on things in that regard. Where is this? Going back to it. This Las Vegas obviously was where the Super Bowl was this year, and where O.J. Simpson was arrested in for the larceny crime that he was committing back in like 2007. But yeah, he won the Heisman, played his whole career for the Bills. Funny how he's pictured here with the Dolphins. Matches up. I mean, they played the Dolphins twice a year, but it's funny. Synchronicity as it relates to the Finkel Einhorn ritual. But the Bills were at the heart of that ritual, right? Niagara Falls, the path of the eclipse, and the closing of Niagara Falls, the launching of the car on the Rainbow Bridge to close it down. All of these things that related to Buffalo and San Francisco, because O.J. Simpson played for both teams. It's interesting that he's seen here wearing number 19 because number 19 belongs to this guy, Deebo. What's his name? Deebo Samuel, who's one of their he's like their top receiver. Okay. So we're going to get down to this. There's a lot of interesting numerology stuff going on just with the play that I was able to find this morning with the O.J. Simpson stuff. Factors in with the collapse of Oz, because this, of course, now that Oz is the Emerald City, the whole ritual is past us with the eclipse. We're waking up from Oz, just like in the eclipse ritual of the Full Metal Alchemist, when Ed's brother is risen from the depths of the ether, so he can have his physical body back, as if from a dream. Right? Everybody's back where they should be. It's kind of what this energy potentiation, I think, is telling us here with the counter spells that the Templars have been able to cast against, whatever's being used against us, knowing in advance what the casuistress would do to these Earth grid control networks. Now we have these rituals playing out to suggest that we're changing out of it. Okay, so follow me here. O.J. Simpson dies at 76. We'll do more gematria stuff on that. You can go to Zach Hubbard's channel. He's probably got plenty going on with the ritual death and the days since he won certain Super Bowls or won certain Heisman trophies, and he actually never won a Super Bowl. But he's famous for the murder being number 32 for the Bills and being number 32 for the USC Trojans and being number 32 for the San Francisco 49ers. So why would he be wearing number 19? And why does it stack up with Samuel, who actually is changing his number from number 19 back to number 1? And he just announced this last month for some reason. So this was his college number, as they say, but is this foretelling or is this foreshadowing what's going to happen with O.J. Simpson? The other thing is, this is the article actually where I substantiated the 22 stab wounds. So there's your 22 stab wounds, and when you go and look at some of the Bills stuff, here's some of these old photos of them. And I don't know. I don't remember what I was looking. Here we go. Simpson scored 76 total touchdowns. I forgot to highlight it, which I think is interesting. There's one of those matches that you'd see with Zach Hubbard's work to show you that this is ritualized even a step further than you might suggest. So 76 total touchdowns in his career. And then the fact that he's got number 9. Yeah, this is just another. I don't know. I have this one up. This is just another one of those things that show number 19 on him. But the fact that he's wearing Samuel's jersey has something to do with the Montana ritual too. Okay. So this is something interesting that I found. This is the whole significance of the number 19. There was one year when O.J. Simpson played on the same team as Joe Montana. They never won a Super Bowl together. It was the era before all the Joe Montana Super Bowls. But for the practice squad in his rookie year, there aren't very many pictures of this, but Joe Montana was wearing number 19. He also wore number 19 for the Chiefs by the end of his career. Interesting, too, the 75-year Diamond anniversary is where he wore number 19. Remember, the Diamond anniversary was concluded in 2020 with the Winter Solstice Reset Ritual, guys. The Diamond City of DC, it's shaped like a diamond, a perfect, square diamond. 75 years since V-Day, Super Bowl, of World War II. All of these things were ritualized in the Montana moon rituals of the two solar eclipse periods between August 2017 and what we just went through. Joe Montana was the heart of a lot of this. And there's going to be more to this number 19 story, I can tell, is why I'm bringing it up now, but in no uncertain terms, as there's something else to look at right now, right? There's a lot of steg attached already to the Hardman rituals, to the Bridges rituals, to the Super Bowl rituals. And O.J. Simpson now dying right after the eclipse on today, the 11th, with the 22 stab wounds from the murder, right? And the Bills, the fact that he played for the Bills. And now Joe Montana, obviously, he's wearing number 16 in his rookie year. He didn't always wear number 19. Here he is again in his rookie year. But for some reason, for a very short period of time in the practice squad, wore number 19 and finished his career with the Chiefs with number 19. The Chiefs, Kansas City, Oz. We aren't in Kansas anymore. These are all related, guys. These are the riddles unfolding with the steganography and the culture that's attempting. This is the battle of the culture. I don't know who's got control of the keys to the NFL. I don't know who's got control of the keys really to the UFC or any of these entertainment industry scripted things. But there is definite spell casting for your mind happening all the time and constantly until this war is over. What's the eighth sphere got to do with it? Death Stranding will surely give us some of that, some of those answers when the thing comes out. I'm gonna have to promise again to give you guys deeper dissertations with individual topics on Substack. I've still got a lot of those outlined. I just haven't had the time to go back and populate some of this archive so this doesn't seem so obtuse to digest, especially if you're coming to it for the first time. But we're going to get dropped in Oz by the July 19th is I think what we have coming to us, right? So a couple other things just in the news before we close out, guys, because this whole Bridges connection stuff, it almost exhausted me in trying to piece this stuff together. Because it's just a lot right now. There's, people in my life are finally coming around to some of this stuff and they're asking me about it. And it's exhausting to talk about because the normies be normies and there's blockages from going into certain topics. But hopefully some of this stuff onward, I can, it starts to become a little bit more that you can share some of these other items that I'll close the video out with your normie friends to try and breach some of these deeper concepts and how they're all connected. But you guys remember our died suddenly friend, Damar Hamlin. This all happened when I was taking a break from making content. So I didn't get, again, to do too much of a deep dive into this, but the threes were all over the Super Bowl this year. The Buffalo Bills were all about this. And Damar Hamlin, the pro football icon, whoever they replaced the real Damar Hamlin with, this guy, he's been acting as Damar Hamlin this whole time. He's got a new sports drink. Don't Quit. And Don't Quit has, let's see here. Yeah, 33 grams of protein in it. So a lot of these have Damar Hamlin's face on them with number 3 and 33 grams of protein. So this is his new gig. He's starting this thing with, I don't know what level of notoriety they're trying to give this fake Damar Hamlin now, but they're still trying to pump him into the public atmosphere. And then there's this other thing, guys. Where did I put that? There's a new type of sports league that's happening. Oh, by the way, guys, before we go too far away from it too, Kennedy Space Center confirmed that they're filming a Project Artemis movie. Project Artemis is the program where they're sending women to the moon. The VSTEG in this also goes back to this video, by the way. We talked about the Artemis moon missions in this House of M Hex on Humanity video. But they are doing something further with the ritual of the Artemis moon missions, and they've now announced that they're going to man women to the moon and put people back on the moon by 2025. But in addition to all of that, where I want to show you guys is, here we go, right here. This is a new, like, 2 Parallel Paths of Humanity theme. If you've been part of this community, we actually have a Discord channel also. 2 Parallel Paths of Humanity is one of our themes right over here in the server that we talk about. If you're not part of the Discord community, you can reach out to me in the comment section below, and I'll send you a timed link to where you can come join this thing. I'm going to open this up for free for a little while longer, and then I'm actually going to close it back down, and we'll start a subscription model through Substack where this is connected to the Substack. But for a little bit of short period of time, you can get an invite to this if you're curious about staying in touch with these topics. This is where the community chats in the off time between videos. But the 2 Parallel Paths is one of these themes that we've got going along with the steganography. Part of the plan of those instituting the casuistrists' way is that cybernetics is kind of the way of the future. And alongside the moon missions, the Artemis moon missions and the fake moon missions that were filmed, Ridley Scott, you've got this Ridley Scott Association-backed new sports league. You've got, it's called E Plus or Enhanced Plus, for a sports league where you can have cybernetic enhancements, steroids, drug enhancements. You can enhance your body in order to participate. So it becomes who can engineer their bodies the best. We have an odd amount of just like cybernetic future AI, control grid themes going on. But I just wasn't anticipating that there was an actual sports league that was in development where you could, within the rule set, be a bionic human and still participate, and the records wouldn't matter. So among all of the transgender stuff that they're ruining sports with already, we have a cybernetic sports league that takes it and ramps it up to the very next level. Who knew? But there's your 2 Parallel Path story. Another one to keep an eye on, guys, with the 2 Parallel Paths is part of the PSYOP of the immigration that we really haven't covered a ton just because, again, that's done to death in the main news story. What you don't see with the 2 Parallel Path side of things and how you want to look at how things are being hidden or occluded from you is that there's actually a narrative out there in the home buying community that's keeping that's actually keeping the housing market up right now. it's on the verge of collapse in so many ways because there's a false perception that there's no inventory, so that prices should be high. Are the basics of it. The fact of the matter is there's a bunch of manipulated numbers that would suggest inventory is a lot lower than it is. There are millions of houses that home constructors have built over the last 2 to 3 years. They're non-occupied, that are also not reported, or they're not actually technically complete because the builders, these big spec home builders, they just get the houses to the point where they're 98 to 99% complete, where they just need like granite countertops or one toilet installed or the gas lines hooked up, like whatever, just barely not complete. So they don't have to actually tag these things as complete, but there are millions of them. You can go all around Phoenix, all around my area and look, and it's just madness. There's no inventory shortage to speak of. But the questions always remained, in my eyes, it always looked like those could potentially be a landing spot for all this immigration crisis, because where do you put them all? Well, just this last week, like literally yesterday, I think, April 10th, there's a new cash grant program put in place to help encourage first-time home buyers, $25,000 cash grant. And this is for down payment assistance, for purchasing housing, and you don't have to be you don't have to prove any official status of anything. No citizenship, no anything. You just have to say, I'm a first-time home buyer. Is what it essentially boils down to. And this $25,000 from first look looks as if, by the language that is in the grant framework, that these immigration fraudsters may be eligible to access or eligible to apply for it or eligible to receive it. And by doing so, could take this $25,000 and give it to one of these spec home suppliers that has overbuilt in Phoenix, Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, and all of these other areas. And kind of at least enough money to move in and use squatters' rights to not ever make another payment and just to occupy the house, lest we have a housing crisis where prices collapse because we have too much inventory, not too little. I'm just speculating on some of this, guys, but it's one to watch. Just watch who, with this new $25,000 grant program, look where the money flows to. I don't suspect it's going to go to American citizens. I think it's probably going to go into the hands of the immigrated. And lastly, this one. This is the other one to keep track of, and especially relative to The Wizard of Oz, because this in particular was something we faced a little while ago. And it's not really a ban on TikTok. They're presenting this new bill and have been I don't know where it's at right now. I think it was already like voted on it. If the House passes bill, it has to go to the Senate now. So this is in between getting passed by the House of Representatives and getting passed by the Senate. And it is a bill that is actually disguised as a ban on TikTok, but it's actually a Freedom of Information Act, Patriot Act Part 2, USA Patriot Act Part 2. Whatever the USA Patriot Act didn't take from you already, this legislation aims to take from you now, to totally be, to take all of your privacy rights away and give all permissions to intrude on your life and blah, blah, blah. Luckily, there's nothing it can really do about the Second Amendment as it relates to this, but the fact that TikTok is involved again in this legislation has to do with the Magic of Oz book. And this is where this is going to come in. I'm going to switch mics up real quick. We're going to close this out by me showing you this stuff and making a few this stuff in the book that relates to this legislation and make some predictions, therefore, on how much of a timeline do we really have until this whole Oz situation comes to a close. So just a sec. I'm going to mute this mic, get over back to the other one. Okay, so this is the Magic of Oz book. It's worth noting it's the last of the series. There's a 3-volume set. The Wizard of Oz, the Emerald City of Oz, and the Magic of Oz. I've got all 3 volumes. This is the 3rd one. And the story containing TikTok in it for today's, the one that's, here are the other 2 ones. They look like that on my shelf, is the character of TikTok. A lot of you might remember that there is a character named TikTok in the Wizard of Oz. Funny enough, this is him. It's Clockwork Man. And in this parable, which is actually the second to the last book in all of the Oz novels, there's another one. There's one more book at the end called, I guess there are 2 more. It's the 3rd to the last. There's one called The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman. And then there's one called Jack Pumpkinhead and the Sawhorse. But other than that, this one is very close to, it's like 3rd or 4th to the last book. These are little vignettes that the Wizard of Oz story goes through. And if we're following the timeline of when the Veil of Oz is going to come apart or come down based on how close we are to the end of the book, I think we can make some assumptions that we're pretty close to being there. And it's interesting that the Oz logos and stuff. Anyway, this story here, without sparing any of the details, is about TikTok falling out of working order. The Gnome King is this mad, kind of like Biden character, demented, very off his rocker, a little bit, I guess you could say unpredictable. And TikTok, being one of the favorite subjects of the princess Ozma, just like Gen Z, Ozma pretty much is represented by, or Gen Z pretty much represents the caricature of Ozma, uses the TikTok app. It becomes something that the TikTok man becomes something that needs repair. And he has to go appeal to the Gnome King in order for this to happen. And the Gnome King ends up breaking him apart. Just like shown in this picture here. Unfortunately for the king, this isn't going to be good for Gen Z because Ozma, as would be representative of Gen Z, needs a working model of the app in order to remain happy. And you can't piss off Princess Ozma or you'll have her wrath to deal with. So the Gnome King gets all flustered about fixing the TikTok character better than he was before. And TikTok basically leaves the scene better than he came in. So anyway, I'll close this up for just a sec. All right, put us back on the screen here. Plug this back in. Close this thing out, right? So what we can infer from the Wizard of Oz story there, if we're looking at the legislation that may or may not pass Biden's desk, and we're following the arc of the Wizard of Oz, if it follows the arc of the Wizard of Oz, this whole TikTok thing will be a non-starter. They'll attempt to break the system by sabotaging the rest of our privacy, our livelihoods. They're going to intrude into all of the ways that right now they're not allowed to with the Patriot Act by way of this, or they're going to attempt to, but it's going to backfire on them. And it's going to backfire on them not because the people that don't want to be intruded on with these antitrust, like anti-security, anti-privacy. Sorry, again, Mercury retrograde. My thoughts aren't coming as fluidly as they should. But these anti-privacy laws that would also be accompanied with this legislation, the pushback from Gen Z, who's more pissed that they're losing their TikTok app, just like Princess Ozma in the story. This is very close to the end of The Wizard of Oz. So it's, again, very close to the end of the situation that at least those books lay out. And what does that say about how close we are to the timeline? Well, this is where I go back to my guess. Again, remember with the Twister movie? If we're this close to July 19th, by way of, the end of those chapters in the book, what do the last stories in The Magic of Oz have to do with lining up with this July 19th arrival in the rainbow world, how we see things? Time will tell, guys. Time will tell. The ritual of time. So, anyway, I don't know if there's much else to say other than a public service announcement about the Fox faction and going into keeping track of all of these rituals happening in the popular news, the headlines that we just went through. The mainstream media is dying. The authority that they have is going away. And we probably won't even be able to reference a lot of these stories in the same way in the future very soon, because they just won't, these outlets just won't be there. They won't be around. They're already trying to insert some other media as the new alternative media. And this is the new battle out there, guys. This is the new aftermath of Oz, where the confusion is going to lie and where the real battleground for your mind and where the VSTEG is really going to be important, I think, is keeping track with these themes, with the new alternative news. Just be aware of this, because this is an unfolding situation where the amazing Polly is in battle with, and it's actually, the jury is out whether or not Amazing Polly is actually a CIA asset, like a PSYOP asset herself. Her husband is connected with the intelligence agencies in Canada, as I understand it. And so it's take what she says with a grain of salt too. But in this one here, Red Flags and the TWC, the wellness company, she's calling out a whole host of individuals in media who look to be bought and paid for, and who I, through the steganography, had already had a lot of them pegged as bought and paid for also. It's part of the Caswas vs. Fox faction. She just did another one yesterday. People are actually calling her out now. This is how crazy the lack of authority is. People are calling her out for being an asset of some sort of intelligence community. And she's trying to fight against what would appear to be some sort of FBI, CIA, Blackwater controlled connections with the wellness company and Rumble, the platform, guys. That's why I don't know how long we'll be able to be on Rumble as a platform. But one of the news agencies, one of the alternative media trusted sources in these new alternative spaces has risen through the ranks of one of the most visible in this new alternative community of media, guys, is the Vigilant Fox, the V Fox. Now, come on, we know better, knowing the Hideo Kojima Fox faction Jesuit memes, right? Like, where is it? Where's our Fox faction? It's all the way up here, isn't it? Here we go. Our Fox faction. The Boring Company, Elon Musk's. Oh, shit. That's a good reminder, too. What we also have to do to close this thing out and show you a warning to pay attention to. But here's the Fox faction symbology from, the Metal Gear video games, Hideo Kojima's own creations. We have the Vigilant Fox, which we, as the people that are familiar with the work, have come to understand. The Fox, relative to November 5th and Guy Fawkes Day, Fawkes. It's a homophone for Fox. And the whole psyop behind the Jesuit insertion and takeover from within, with their spying, casuistry tactics, government organizations, religious organizations, entertainment organizations in order to create the state that we live in today. When we see the sigil of the fox, we can't but help but tie it to the Jesuits and the fact that Vigilant News is one of these trusted resources of the new media. And I have to agree with, if I'm just looking at the steganography, I have to agree with Polly, at least with them. Whether or not I agree with Polly on a lot of other things, I at least agree with her assessment that there's a lot of media out there, including this guy, whoever it is, or the collective of it. A lot of people think it's, they would have you believe it's one guy. And here's his website, by the way, Vigilante News. VigilanteNews.com is the Vigilant Fox. So don't trust everything you see, but I'll link this to, this is the resource page that I've used to also look into Polly herself. And here's actually the network of people that are bought and paid for with this new media. Some of them used to be even trustworthy. I liked. I mean, Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson are here at the top. They don't really factor in too much directly with a lot of this stuff, but the Daily Caller, SGT Report, here's the Vigilant Fox, Naomi Wolf, Peter McCullough, James O'Keefe, JP Sears is up here, Brett Weinstein, Alex Jones. Who knows how involved all these people are? These are a lot of the people that are being lofted up with new media, though. I think there's a lot more nuance than what Polly's put here. Obviously, she's just like grouped them all together into this smattering. But she has tied together that the wellness company as a sponsor is directly related to a lot of this stuff. And it's curious that they just came out of nowhere and are they're like a bajillion dollar company that backs all this stuff. I won't say that individuals on this list are bought and paid for. Here's Zero Hedge. Zero Heads probably has got a little bit of suspicion because there's some Zionist background with even Zero Hedge, right? We've got to be super, super vigilant, if I can steal the word from our friend the Vigilant Fox, to look at the correct perspective on media from here on in, guys. Because using the steg to tell the truth or to see the truth beneath all this is the only way we're going to sift through the confusion. It's getting really, really hard to see. Is Polly good or is she bad? I don't know. Which one is it? Which one? So, give yourself some grace out there. It's tough to tell sometimes. And the biggest psyop of them all, though, is with this guy. And this is, the thing that I need to close out with. Just as we opened with the solar eclipse, the rituals that we dug into a lot more in the past about how tunnels can be dug underneath to create electric conduits, to create transmutation circles that capture neutrino energy from solar eclipses and potentially use them to cast spells. Who's at the heart of all this stuff? Well, the guy with the Tesla company, the guy whose car was launched into the Rainbow Bridge at Niagara Falls and used as a battery weapon. Part of the ritual of the Key Bridge collapse and, owns a space company. What does it tell us about the Mason-Dixon line and gravity's rainbow and the space technology? Okay. This, Elon Musk is the most enigmatic person there is. And this clip here, I want you guys just to watch and figure out for yourselves, like between it all, what's real and what's not with he and all of his companies. Here's the fact of the matter. He's got the Boring Company, SpaceX, Tesla. Sits on, I don't know how many boards, supposedly technology boards to the president, and goes on podcasts and shows all the time, has 14 illegitimate kids. He's 14 kids, guys, 14. Across many different women, but in addition to all this, tweets all day long. It's all he seems to do, is tweet. So we've pointed this out. Even Daniel Lish just pointed it out much more comprehensively than we ever have on this channel about how his connection with the Howard Hughes psyop back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s mirrors what they're putting out with him these days. There's no way that he's covering the bases in all these companies, and even these companies using the stag to see through them seem to be a front for other stuff. His whole presentation here, which thank you Goose from the VSTEG community. I think you listed, I don't know where you put it. We put it somewhere. Oh, here we go. Yeah, he listed it just the other day up here in the Discord channel. I hadn't seen this video yet. We put it in the Ancient History and Space Aliens channel talking about stuff. And what he pointed out was just, you know, in reference to some of the Mars mission aims that Elon is very adamantly aiming for. We have the steganography already with For All Mankind, which we went through last time. In our last video, last month, and this one, about how it connects with the shape of the eclipse path and what it foretells for what's really going on and how actually colonized is Mars already. If it's colonized at all, it's using technology that's beyond the kind of propulsion that they tell us gets us there with rockets and stuff, right? But here he is, Elon Musk up here on stage, pimping this stuff out, wearing a number 22 on his sleeve. So the VSTEG right there is, first of all, you don't want to trust anything he's saying right now because he's wearing the VSTEG. He's got permission to lie to you. And he's talking about early on how he doesn't think aliens are real. I think consciousness is rare. He's saying, I think it's, I just don't think it's possible that I've just looked at the odds and it doesn't seem likely that aliens exist. So we're just alone in the universe, probably. But now, even more of a reason to get to Mars. So he's talking about this multiplanetary expansion. And then it shows all the big dick rockets that are next to him here. And I don't know who all these people are in the crowd. This is just the other day, April 6th, is when this supposedly happened. But he goes into this whole dissertation and talks about the timelines. Oops, where are they? Here we go. Here we go. Come on. To get people in different phases using these different rockets to Mars. He goes through all these statistics about all of these recyclable rocket programs, which again, this is a bunch of horseshit. If you're going to get people to Mars, it's not going to be with rockets, guys. It's not going to be with rockets. That's part of the whole PSYOP with Space Force and the secret tech. And this is what's coming apart right now. It's funny that at 22 minutes and 22 seconds into the video, this is what you get. This is literally how they're shilling you to tell you that this is how it's all going to work to justify your bajillions of dollars. They get there with a simple magnetic craft with a field and zip right over there at really low cost, I'm sure, by the way, versus all of this infrastructure that's going to need it and all this fuel. And it's just a bunch of horseshit. But, the whole thing is to terraform Mars. Just like the Dune novels. What have we been talking about the Dune novels and the steganography for so long, right? So, what the end goal for the Elon PSYOP is, I don't know. I think he's just a distraction for now to keep you from thinking you can yourself really get there. And if they show you with the technology, if he shows you with the technology because he's so credible, he's the richest man in the world. He's so smart, He's just so trustworthy and credible because he gave us free speech with X. We should believe everything he says because his opinion matters. He just goes up on stage and says shit, guys. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, it's not ever very intelligible. He doesn't have anything other than like a loose script that he's got to follow, it seems. So be wary of paying attention with too much truth is what they're telling you, because it's going to be, they're trying to give you just enough to where you don't investigate what's actually happening. Oh, if I know that they're sending people there, I won't actually look into if they're actually sending people there. Just like in China, surely if they're building cities, people live there, right? No, those are ghost cities. They just build those buildings for no reason other than to fudge the books. They probably do the same thing with solar panels. It's my supposition China actually is doing the same thing with solar panels now. They're actually building swaths of these things and not hooking them up because there's no silver in the solar panels. They're just like building everything, all the other components, except for the silver, to build them, and just putting them into these big farms and not hooking them up because there's no conductivity. They don't work. It's just a big ghost farm instead of a ghost city. They're just refreshing, the fudging of the books. They're saying that they're using the silver and they're not. They're keeping the silver in their hands, is my opinion. The same type of shit's probably going on at Tesla. Tesla, I think, is sending their cars, Elon, to China to store them in big lots, and these cars don't work either. This is why they're not selling over there. There's a lot of deliveries of Teslas, but not a lot of sales of Teslas in China. And I suspect it's because of the same reason. Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company, whatever, all these subsidiaries of Musk Enterprises. I don't even know if it's a parent company that they call it, but the companies under Musk. They, I imagine that the silver that they are able to keep off books and not use, they are doing so with now. So a bunch of non-working vehicles, I suspect, are being delivered to China with some big government subsidy deal that they're able to take these things just like they took our trash, probably, and park them so that they can stay on books. And it looks like the silver got used. Anyway, the other thing to keep aware of, why it really matters with Musk, is remember the Trojan horse. O.J. Simpson, right? Oh my God, he just died today. The Trojan horse from the UFC Trojans. No, I don't think it's anything that's that closely tied to this stuff. But back in October of last year, remember, Elon reminded us, Twitter, he wants to become X and then replace all of the other apps. He wants it to be your bank. This is social credit score stuff, guys. This is where it all leads. You trust this guy too fucking much, you're going to get bit because there's a larger thing going on here that's trying to butter you up than you possibly know. What is the Trojan horse, maybe even of the TikTok legislation as it relates to this? Ban TikTok, flock to X, because it's the only place we can be now, right? Oops. This one. So be wary, guys. Be safe. Don't drive Teslas because of the electromagnetic exposure that they give you anyway. Come on. Get your head out of the gutter and stop driving these EVs. Stop paying attention to the fact that free speech on X is all that matters. 'Cause it's not truly, like anything but a Trojan horse. So, what's the significance of the 19? We'll find out more of that stuff too as the days come and go. But yeah, guys, that's it for now. Made it through another of these culture presentations. I promise you again, I'm gonna get. I'm going through books and books and books. It's just I'm trying to make room to make this my life again. So if you bear witness to my my attempts to make more room and give me some grace while I do that, I'll make more of this content as time goes along. In the very near future, we'll do some more interviews and stuff too. I'm lining some stuff up now. In addition to reading a novel, by the way, called The Two Planets, written in the 1800s about two races that collide, one from Mars and one from Earth. And one of the inhabitants from Mars, his name is El. This is written in the 1800s, guys. Wernher von Braun, on the cover of the book, says, "I shall never forget how I devoured this novel with curiosity and excitement as a young man." There it is. Here. There it is. There's the quote. There's so much steg in the stuff I'm reading. It's not even funny. It's hard to keep it all straight these days, but
I'm glad to be doing it again with y'all, and please do follow my work on my Rumble page. And this is probably where things are going to be the most stable. I'll link the Substack to you guys when it's relevant. Again, I need to get some content put up there before you can, but I love y'all. Be safe. We'll see how things play out between now and July 19th. You can expect to see me a few more times between now and then, though. Take it easy, guys. Be safe.